Now we'll start about the session in the theme of empowering equitable waters and maybe environmental education. So advancing gender mainstreaming in water management. So actually this session development objective, for planning, as you already know, actually kind of the gender equity and gender equality or mainstreaming. Those kinds of the prospects are cross-cutting issue for each sector, not only water and education and many other the development cooperation sector issues. So I would like to actually bring those kind of issues. If there are any standing issue for your project or for research or from your experience, that would be kinds of good best practices to share among ourselves, and we can learn lessons from our experience. That was why this session was organized. And I would like to introduce first speaker, Dr. Minha Lee. She's working at Kangwon National University as a researcher, Department of Geology, and she's doing research on water resources, soil and environmental policy. With extensive academic and research experience, she has contributed to advancing knowledge in sustainable resource management and the interaction of geology and environmental governance. Her work bridges scientific analysis with policy development, supporting evidence-based decision-making for climate resilience, land use, and natural resource protection. She's deeply engaged in collaborating with interdisciplinary teams to address this kind of challenges. So I would like to introduce Dr. Minha Lee as first speaker.
Thank you so much for a very elaborative introduction. Good afternoon. My name is Minha Lee, just introduced as a Kongwon National University faculty. And I will start with the presentation of I think the gender issue has become one of the central agenda in international governance once again. Interestingly, I have been invited to several talks this year, and all of them actually talked about gender equality. I was quite surprised because it was not addressed for the past 3 to 4 years. It was silent, but this year it came back. And with my revisit to this issue, what I realized is that there still is a long way. Is it correct?
Sorry about that. I thought it was on.
This is PDF file, so I'm not sure that's working. You can just tell me next.
Next, please.
Sorry about that. I should have gone for PPT instead. They don't have the PowerPoint presentation menu for the PDF.
Actually, I have no idea.
Okay, never mind. I'll do it verbally. Okay, what I realized with the gender equality and sustainable development goal is that women empowerment is very important, and it's a multifaceted issue. It's not just like singular topic, but first of all, we need to empower them with the skill and knowledge required for their sustainable development. That is equal education opportunity. And another thing is they need financial independence to cover their life, which is the economic empowerment that can be guaranteed with equal labor participation opportunity to women. Lastly, which is actually a very pending issue, even in the developed world, is the social empowerment through equal responsibility sharing on marriage and childcare. Without these three being fulfilled, sustainable development for all will be just a title. Next, please. Being Korean, I actually studied the Korean statistic, which is more available data for myself. What I realized is the gender equality in education is somewhat accomplished. Nowadays, we don't have any more, we don't hear people say, oh, since you're a girl, you cannot go to school. That's something that we don't hear in Korea, but I know there are a lot of countries where it is actually daily practice still. So the school enrollment in Korea recovered the pre-war level, and even in the tertiary level, we realized that 76% of 25 to 34-year-old Korean women earned a tertiary qualification compared to 64% of male counterparts. So actually more women are graduating with degree than men here in Korea. And actually that is true for all other OECD countries where, because the OECD country average is 52% women against 39% male. That's the OECD statistic data. Next, please. But that is actually very concentrated in specific fields. So the STEM area where we call engineering majors and scientific majors, the gender disparity still lingers. So a lot of Korean girls prefer art and language field as with a social science fields rather than the STEM area. That is another question that we actually have to find the answer to. Why do Korean girls prefer social science to physical or natural sciences? Next, please. And one of the answers that we found is that another unique situation that we found about Korea is that dual income family took up to 44% of total marriage couple in 2011, and it's increased to 48% in 2023. During the same period, total fertility rate dropped below 1 in 2023, which was only 1.2 in 2011, which means Korean society is aging very quickly with little birth rate, and more of the women are actually participating in economic world with a dual income. Then the question that we have to raise at this point is, what would be the relationship between increasing dual income family and dropping childbirth rate? That's also another question we have to address. Next, please. And in searching for the answer, what we realized is that primary caregiver remained to be mother in all developed countries. That was actually more specified and epitomized during the COVID pandemic time because all the schools and private caretaking institutions were closed. Even in America, all the caretaking institutions were closed, and that time, a lot of women actually gave up their career. So between 2020 to 2022, which is the COVID-19 pandemic period, mothers' caregiving time increased by 150%, while fathers contributed modestly by 118%. But if you look at the composition, you can see that fathers' increased time were actually dedicated to outdoor playtime and TV and computer games, which means father's caregiving time was dedicated to playtime, whereas all the study help and meal preparation, grocery shopping, those kind of more time-consuming ones were still mother's work, which resulted in a lot more concentrated increase in mother's caregiving time in comparison. Next, please. And so in sum up, what happened is the labor force participation rate of the male was always higher than OECD average in Korea. And now female rate is still catching up. It's actually fast catching up as evidenced with dual income countries, but it's still lower than OECD average. Next, please. While she works on this, we will
Actually,
go on with our presentation. Okay, no, one before that, please. A page before that, please. Yeah,
second one.
Yeah, that's the one. Oops. Wow.
Yeah, actually that laser pointer is not well working, so we did the previous session just to ID it. I mean the chair or
Okay.
so
Thank you.
sorry about this condition.
No, don't worry. We'll continue. What will happen is that the gender disparity was actually even larger in the engineering field. And that, what we realize is, engineering fields usually is associated with field trips. They have to go to the actual field to investigate, and they have to do lab research, which actually requires the person to be there physically. And it actually includes a lot of days and nights. Sometimes I majored in chemistry, and what I did was, even as a bachelor undergraduate student, I had to stay in the lab to do all the experiments, which took like more than 48 hours. Even like 2 a.m. I had to go back into the lab to make sure that the reaction is happening. That sort of thing is what is included in the science field, whereas social science is actually quite different environment. That is something, yeah, same thing as even the social scientists have to read up a lot of papers and do their research all night and day, but that's something that you can do at home as well. That sort of like different characteristics of the field is actually lingering there, that differentiates or prevents women participation. So what happened in the engineering major is, when we surveyed the students and asked them, why did you choose social science? Or why did you choose natural science? Surprisingly, it was not because they liked math or they liked chemistry or they liked languages. It was more to do with, because I could stay up until 2, 3 in the morning in the lab. But girls, a lot of them actually felt unsafe to stay up all night in the lab alone. Or even worse, if there's only male and she is the only woman there at night, like 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning. That sort of survey data actually reveals the environment is actually what's hindering girls from freely choosing their subjects. And next one is, because they think about the marriage and childcare, they actually hesitate to choose science field because they think that's something that you cannot do during their 20s and 30s when they have to think about their marriage life. So what we realize is that in the gender equality is that even in developed world, where we think that in the equality is somewhat achieved, we still have the glass ceiling in science field particularly, more than social sciences or even art. That glass ceiling is actually caught up with the marriage life and the childcare. So I actually came here early and we had a brief discussion and we talked about water and gender. And actually the water security and gender equality is actually a big issue in developing world, because if it doesn't rain, girls in developing world have to walk far away to get the water needed for their daily life. But in Korea or even other developed world, what they need is they have to be home to take care of their children if they have children. And because of that, it is very difficult for them to actually stay up in the lab 24/7. That sort of like social barrier is still there, and that gender disparity is translated in this graph, where they say the more dual income family actually can be translated to less kids, because it is very difficult to have kids while you have your career going. Actually, I talked about this already, so we can go. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. And because of that, this actually graph is one of the things that I was thinking about, how the natural science and even engineering difference. Because in the engineering is somewhat thought of as more time needed for the lab tests, and it's more masculine they think that it's more masculine because it's more about the mechanics. Whereas the natural science is more, they have, actually, that's a question. Why do you think the statistics is higher in natural science than the engineering? What do you think is the most distinctive truth about natural science that actually is translated then? You can just throw your idea. Yes, please. I already gave you
more people study natural science.
Yes,
Yeah.
more girls study natural science than engineering. Why? I gave you the explanation for the social sciences and STEM, but even in the STEM, natural science and engineering is differentiated. Why?
Engineering is a physical thing, physical word, no?
Engineering is 공학, so it's more mechanic. That's what that was the first example that I gave you. It's considered more masculine because it's more to do with mechanics. That's one thing. But the second is pharmaceutical and
Care.
nurses. They're all in the natural science. Say natural science, the statistics showed as if the gender equality is achieved in natural science because there are pharmaceuticals and nurses, which is considered as women's job.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually deliberately included this one because I wanted to highlight, like, we all have to think about when we look at the statistics. Statistics can be, if we just see it as this one, 56% of the total number is women, which means if gender disparity is gone, it's 50-50. But if you look at it, it's only because there's like pharmaceutical and nurses where women contribute 90%. But if you think about it, which means if you look at the chemists, it drops down to 10. So we have to realize that when we look at the statistics, we have to look at it deeply. A lot of reports are written like this. So they say, oh, gender equality has been achieved. But is it? Next, please. So what happened is, in STEM, which actually it requires a lot of long hours of the research, if you take a year off for childcare, a lot of them actually means that you are disconnecting your work. Because if you think about it, since we are all doing research here, I'm sure you're aware that most decent research are multiple years, 3 to 5 years. And imagine that you are actually taking a year off in between. Can you go back to that project? That just means that you are dropping out.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, the income gap is actually quite large. That's another reason why women actually choose social science to scientific professions. Because in science profession, the income gap between women and men is a lot larger than social science or language or arts, purely because of the disrupted research years that actually hinders women to become a responsible manager of projects. But income actually jumps with your title, as in, are you the manager or are you the responsible of the project or not, actually determines your income a lot. And because of that, the income gap in R&D workforce in scientific area, the gap between male and female are actually quite large, even in developed world. Next, please. And because of that, the Korean government actually adopted a lot of policies to promote women scientists. So we even have a national scholar system, which is called Women Scientists Fostering Scholarship. So only women scientists can actually apply for it, and they are entitled to it. And so actually a lot of male actually dispurpose it. But even with that scholarship, we still, if we think about the national projects going on, which is 5 to 10 years, which means that it's the major project, less than 10% of that project is led by women. So even the scholarship actually fosters the younger generation, not the top tier. That's the limitation of current policy. And even worse is because of the low fertility rate hitting Korean society, the Korean government is actually adopting contradicting policy because they have to think about childbirth rate as well. So while the Ministry of Education is actually adopting a lot of policies to foster women empowerment, the social science governance are actually adopting a lot of policies to promote women to go back to motherhood. So these two contradicting policies are actually coexisting in Korean society today. That is actually creating confusion. So even the the women scientists scholarship that I just introduced is actually being under discussion at the moment because of the low fertility rate as well. So we have to think about the gender equality came back this year, as I just said in my introduction, that I've been called to several talks, and this year, surprisingly, all of them asked me to talk about gender equality, and that's not actually a coincidence. It's because a lot of countries are adopting contradicting policies as well. A lot of them are actually doing the gender equality in terms of human rights, but at the same time, they are doing mother has to go back to the motherhood because of the social issues like childbirth rates.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I even talked about this as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal we have to do is we have to make sure that these two contradicting social issue, which is one is the gender equality and second is the childbirth, is obviously important issue as well. So we have to think about how to reconcile between these two contradicting issues. And this is most important at this time because we are living in a digital world. And less women in digital world development, it means that we are just becoming a mere consumer instead of developer. What's happening at this moment is because a lot of women are only concentrating on the social science and language part, not many developers are female in digital related fields. So one of my friends actually told me that AI development is actually facing a big obstacle at this moment because all the developers of AI system are men. AI language, listening AI computers only recognize male voice.
Really?
It was
That's surprising.
And that was what happened in their prototype. That they didn't recognize women's voice because all the developers were men at the time. And another issue was, I'm sure you have experience with the AI. When you talk to them, they sometimes don't understand you, right? So you sometimes have to say, doctor. You have to slow down to make sure they understand, right? But one thing funny they realize is women and men have different intonation. Different pitch, different intonation, different way of talking. And because of that, AI, if you remember, AI is not new of this year. AI was first introduced decades ago, but they went back because they didn't recognize women's voice. And they came back in 2020s. That was what even Stephen Jobs and those people talked about AI, which means it was available. The technique was available since early 2000, and it was introduced in market, but they were not big hit at the moment because they didn't recognize you. But now they finally listen to the women's voice as well, and that project was done by Samsung, Apple. Those companies actually adopted a lot of women part-time employee to do recording. They were there just to record their voices for the AI developers to use and apply to AI. Which means, even in this world, women are just becoming a consumer. That means all of these AI and computer programs are going to be men-centered. That is actually a very important issue. In the long days ago, when agricultural world was there, gender disparity widened because primary economic system was men-centered. Going through second and third industrial revolution, gender gap closed because that was when marketing, finance, those industries were key, the center of the economic system, which was available for women as well. But now we are entering the fourth industrial revolution, which is mechanical. And it's going back to men-centered. We have to think about how economic system changes affected gender equality. So this is the time when we scientists, women scientists, have to really keep your eyes open and make sure that all this science and technology development include women from the developing stage so that we are not ending up with consumers again. Thank you.
Do I open the floor for the question?
Maybe after panel discussion, we can do, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you for your quite trendy presentation based on the data analysis and also the tracking of trendy ones, even though AI industry, how female came into for the role. So now I would like to invite second speaker. She will join through online. Second speaker is Namphung Somanivanh. She's an independent consultant in Laos and currently working with JHSUSTAIN as local consultant for Nam Nung River Water Governance Project. She used to work as a senior project officer for the civil society organization in Laos, and she has experiences working on various types of projects across sectors, for instance, climate resilience, gender development, and policy advocacy. She also has an experience working with CSOs, NGOs, and as well as government partners too. So now I would like to Namphung as a speaker. And Namphung, maybe you can share your presentation. It's better for you to, for smoother operation. Just wait for a second.
이제 다들 음소거 푸시면 바로 말할 수 있어요.
Namphung, now you can do.
Oh yeah.
Thank
Yes.
you, so sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, it's okay.
Yes, so good afternoon, all participants from Korea. I'm currently online from Laos. So my name is Somanivanh. As Miss Irene has been introduced, my background and where I've been working. So today, my presentation is focused on policy to practice, especially about integrating gender perspective in water and also development projects in Laos PDR. So my contents today will consistent with the brief of my country background and some laws and policy of water management and also gender in Lao PDR. And I would like to mention some sample project about gender mainstreaming, especially in the water management and other related project. And I would like to provide some insights of my observation and project lesson learned. Yes, so Laos PDR is located in Southeast Asia, in the landlocked area, which is share border with 5 countries: China in the north and Cambodia to the south, Vietnam at the east, and then Myanmar and Thailand at the west. Sorry, I forgot one country. So our population currently is around 7.5 million people, and in terms of gender equality index in 2014, we are 89 out of 146 countries. And for Human Development Index, we're 174 out of 193 countries. Yes. So I would like to move on some policy and regulation in the water resource management and water in Laos PDR. So as you can see on the screen, there's like a lot of decree, laws, and agreement that focus on water and water resource management. And in those legal documents that present in this presentation are most likely for the water quality and waste management, and also about the water resource, but it's more likely about operationalization and functioning on to manage the water and control the water quality in the area of natural water and the dam operation, and also other related activity on water resources. But in the policy or the legal of the water resource management in Laos, it's lack of mentioning about gender integration and also about inclusivity, but it's most likely mentioned about how the social involved in this part of the work as well. And as for the gender equality in Laos PDR, we have gender equality law that already approved in 2020, which is also first gender equality law that exists in the country. And then we also have the National Action Plan for Gender Equality. This is a master plan for 21 to 25, but the new master plan is under developing right now. It should be approved by 2026 next year. And we also have the law on development and protection of women, which is got approved last year, 2024. With the support from the government side and also international organization that based in the country. And we have also some strategy from other NGO that working in the country, like for example, gender equality strategy by the UNDP from 2022 to 2026, which is focusing on a lot of various sectors across activity and action in the country. They had mentioned some kind of integration in water resource management, but they had a comment on that most of the law and operational functioning in the legal terms on the water resource management in Laos is not yet clear state on the gender integration much. And they have some from the MRC or Mekong committee for the commitment that talking about gender mainstreaming in the development in global Mekong region as well. And we have the main national action plan, especially the socio-economic development strategy that will be concluded this year, and the new one will be coming next year as well. And the 9th 5-year plan of the national socio-economic development plans, which also will be concluded this year, and the new one is under developing, which it will be more focusing on some specific area and priorities. And other related action plan and policy will be coming after this year as well. So that's all from the part of the legal and also the policy regarding water and the gender equality in the country. So I would like to give an example on some project that happening in Laos. The first one I would like to introduce the project on the wash service in rural area in Laos. It's called Beyond the Finish Line, which is supported by the government of Australia on the Waters for Women Fund and working incorporated with SNV organization from Netherlands and in Laos, and also for technical support from the University of Technology in Sydney as well. So the main partner of the government is the Ministry of Health, which is we're focusing on the water sanitation and hygiene in the specific area. So this project is implementing in the Swanakhet province, which is close to the southern part of the country, where it needs a lot of water and sanitation, hygiene, sustainability, and in the area has a risk of high floodation and also the lack of sanitation and also hand washing practice as well. So this project come in to support on improving the health, equality, and well-being of the community in the area, which especially focus on water, sanitation, and also hygiene, but mostly on the sustainability way. So the project consists with 5 key components. First one is about inclusive wash governance and investment. This is focusing on the technical term and the staff in the local authority to support the work on the wash program within the provinces and also in the district level. Second one, they will also tailor the sanitation demand creation, which will be about the action plan in the community that where people are engaged on developing how they can support the wash project in the country and also how they can sustain the knowledge on sanitation and hygiene within the community as well. And the project, of course, it will focus on social and behavior change, communication, how people in the community can disseminate the knowledge about hygiene and sanitation to change the behavior in the community where it's lack of sanitation and hygiene practice. So this project will working closely with the partner in the district area to provide certain knowledge on that, not only in the community, but also in the school, especially for the children who are going to school and need to improve the hygiene and sanitation as well. Fourth one, they were also about the supply chain development and marketing on the sanitation and hygiene, which will be focusing on how they can discuss the improvement of marketing and development in public water in the community and also in the district level as well. And lastly, they will do M&E and also some dissemination on some policy and action plan that from the central level and narrow down to the community, which is focused on hygiene and sanitation and water as well. So the project has been concluded on 2022, which is has been achieved a lot of results. So a lot of people has been benefit from this project, especially in 114 villages, and more than 139,000 people are now living in the defecation-free environment, support in gender and social inclusion, and also they have access to water, sanitation, and hygiene water as well in their household and facility as well. And they have one strategy implemented across the district as well as the action plan of the behavior change communication tool in the 3 districts that engage in this project. They also strengthening the professional and organizational capacity for the local government and private sector who are involved in the WASH project and the WASH sector. And the gender equality and social inclusion practice and concept has been provided the training by the Lao Women's Union from the central level with the support of the district level as well to improve the knowledge and understanding about gender equality and social inclusion where they can support the women to access and control in the water resource within the household and the area of the community. And the second project, it's much more focusing on the policy and advocacy level. This project is called Mekong River Governance Program. It's an inclusion project phase 1. So this is a regional project that has been happening in Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos, but I will focus on Laos PR as the main course of this presentation. So this project is aimed about transboundary in the water governance work, especially on the policy and supporting the government institutions, CSO, and NGO who are involved in the water resource management to have more integration on the work, especially the gender and social inclusion. And they would like to strengthen in women leadership to increase the inclusive decision making in the water government sectors, and also develop some strategy that will support the community to access and control the water within the community, as well as some decision making within the household of the women as well. So the project has focused on three main stuff. Firstly, it's about promote the consideration of gender in water governance, research, and policy. Second is about support joint research and reflection with the civil society, local community, and women's group on the gender impact of hydropower project. And third one is to facilitate stronger link between emerging women leaders who are in the community, in the governments, also NGO, civil society, that working on water governments in Laos and the Mekong region. So as the phase one has been concluded, they have some good result that they has been effectively influenced strategic process and policy on water resource management and also the water governance, and also discuss a new potential about renewable energy through inclusive consultation, policy dialogue, and also engagement with other different stakeholders at subnational, national level, and also the regional level. And through this project, a lot of CSO has been exchanged with the regional partner on how the policy has been going on in the country, how can they improve the gender inclusion into the project and the policy within the country, as well as the implementation of water governance sector, especially with the women leadership including in this work. And the second one is it reached the community member, especially the women and young people and the government representative, hydropower project company and CSO staff that had been received some training and knowledge about the water management policy, and some example from the close neighbor country that joined in this project. As you can see the numbers, there are a lot of people who are joining in this project as well. And as for the government or agency or department, there had been a lot of them engaged in this project and had been joined the training, especially on gender equality and social inclusion of this project, to understand how the involvement of those women leadership from different sectors engage in water governance work as well. And this project actually has continued now as phase 3 already, which is more focused on the institutional level and research agency. Yes. So this is the third project, but it's more likely about the integrated water resource management and ecosystem-based adaptation, which is a new project that has just started implementing since 2022, which the fund by the GEF and in implementation by the UNDP in Laos with the Ministry of Agriculture and Environment, Department of Water Resources. This will be focusing on the climate resilient community through to COVID flood and drought, but using the ecosystem-based adaptation into the work. So this project will be following 3 components. First one, they were talking about developing the national and provincial capacity for integrated catchment management and integrate ecosystem-based adaptation for climate risk reduction. Second one, they were still engaged with the ecosystem-based adaptation with integrate water resource management framework together to support the protective infrastructure and enhance the livelihood of the community and urbanized area in Luang Prabang and Savanakhet. And also they will improve the knowledge management and M&E for the staff and partner who are benefit from this project. In terms of the gender mainstreaming in this project, the project has been considering all the design as a cross-cutting issue that gender should be included, especially the women roles in the household, and talking about how the access to natural resource management, land use, planning, and decision making, there are also some talking about conservation incentive that women and men is different, but how they can integrate this work together and how women are able to be included in the part of conservation incentive work. And talking about the labor and that sometimes women are more directly in close to using the water within the household. So how can we support the women to be able to be more at taking the lead and in the decision making, especially during the flood or during the drought season, how they can get a better access to knowledge about early warning system and how to evacuate themselves and their children during the household. And this project, they were talking about how they can access to control over the ecosystem good and service within the area. And how this project can contribute to gender equality. They try to closing the gender gap in access and control over natural resources, especially in the water resource management. And they try to improve women participation and decision making in terms of maybe action plans of the community, learning about flood warning, basic learning how to evacuate and how to protect themselves and how to prepare for the flood situation. And they will also try to talking about how to generate socio-economic benefit and service for women in this project as well. Even though the project is more likely talking about the climate resilience and also the disaster rate reduction, but all the training through this project are involving gender mainstreaming, especially talking about the gender action plan that has been used from the national level and also from the UNDP side, that they will integrate this into each training section for especially the staff who are engaged in this project and also the community who are the main target of this project. So overall, the project and policy that I have been studying so far, from my observation, I still can see that a lot of regulation and policy in the country are more likely focusing on function and operationalization, especially the water resource management, how to control, access, manage, and how about to set a proper mechanism to keep functioning those work. But the mention of gender in those policy and regulation is still lack and also not much mention about it, but they separate these into another part of as a gender equality work, not mention about how to integrate those together as a crossing over issue while developing some policy in between the gender and other policy or in the water resource management as well. And even though a lot of projects in water resource management are now integrating a lot of gender mainstreaming, but there's still not a proper or like specific action plan that talking gender integration in water resource management, not just only about the data or disaggregated data, but it's more likely about what to do while implementing those projects, not just the number, but how to approach the methodology to engage women directly with the project to be more inclusive and everybody can attend, not only the women, but disability people who are still had benefit from using some sort of water resource management or other relevant benefit from the social and also the welfare within the country. And a lot of water management in project in Laos are kind of considered gender, but there's still some kind of hindrance barrier, like how women are still not much knowledgeable compared to men, especially in the community level. So I think the project should be more consider approach that more visualizing and also not just about the technical, but more like how to engage in a simple conversation to kind of observe their interest and how they can share their own experience through the work that we are doing, especially in the development project within the community level. Yes. And the last section, I just want to say like what we should be doing as a lesson learned for the water and development project in the country. So as I mentioned that there's policy and a lot of stuff, but we still need to engage with policy and decision maker who are develop the plan, strategy that how to operate some certain work and development in the country. And if we're talking about the water management in the country, we should working with people who are as a water planner and manager in the district area, central level until the community level. And the people who are impacted directly by the water management in the country is the local people, where they actually experience a lot of change, a lot of access, and how they cannot access, that we can learn with them and also use the experience to adapt into some proper action plan that not just only about the policy but about practical practice as well. And when we're talking about the local community, we cannot forget the educational institution and other NGOs and CSO with the country who are sometimes in working or a lot working with the community, engaged directly and learning the experience with them. So these organization and institution can share the experience with those in a higher level and provide some insight, information, and data for them to work on the policy that more localizing and also more practical. And we should not forget that improve the women leadership in this work is really important, because like all of them are taking part a lot of things that people are not mentioned a lot, especially in the part of the water management and other related work, because sometimes women are not really outspoken, especially in our PDR. So how we can improve that? That's the work that we need to focus on. And also other stakeholder that we should be engaged in terms of design, implementation, funding, and also the practical that practice that they have been done within the country that we can adapt and also localize as the Lao context practice as well. Yes, that's all for my presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
So, thank you. So even the environment is not good, Nampung, can you stay until the session finished? Okay, then maybe if the questions right after your presentation will be followed after panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Then I would like to third speaker, Ms. Bilina Engheepi, is an Indigenous development practitioner from Nagaland, India, and a PhD candidate at Ewha Women's University in Seoul. She currently serves as programs and MEL officer at the Global Resilience Partnership hosted by the Stockholm Resilience Center, where she advances resilience-focused initiatives and knowledge systems that integrate gender, youth, and locally led approaches. Her doctoral research examines the intersection of water scarcity, informal markets, and governance in Kohima through political ecology and feminist perspectives, with a focus on indigenous approaches to resilience. Her expertise spans climate resilience, gender mainstreaming and analysis, and community-led governance, with a focus on amplifying indigenous voices in global discussions. So please give a big applause to the third speakers.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and I think this is a perfect transition for me right now, because we talked about we move from data to policy, and I will not try to bore you, but I will bring a lot of fresh stories from the field. I actually just came back from the field like a week ago, and just wanted to share like the reality, the field realities of what we see in the development sector. And I think a lot of us here in this space are all development practitioners. So I think it would be just nice to share some of the insights from the field, as well as just be able to share some of the good practices. Like there is a gap, there is an issue, but there is a little ray of hope somewhere, and I hope to be able to just discuss that further. So I want to introduce myself, since Dr. Park has already introduced, but my title is The Spaces Between Us, Social Status, Power and Water Scarcity in India's Mountain Cities. So even if you haven't visited, I'm sure all of you are very familiar and have heard of the mighty Himalayas, and that's where I come from. And I will start my presentation by showing a brief, just a Can I go to the next slide, please? Yeah, just a very small snippet of what it looks like. What you see on the picture is actually on the background. If you see the clouds moving around, that's the Himalayas. That's one of the peaks. It's the Kanchenjunga. This is what you see in one of my field sites. Very beautiful. Everything is just picture perfect, you know. But what you see on the screenshots that I've attached here are actually different screenshots from news articles, research articles, government websites, and all of these things. And if you see, this is just one thing that's screaming water scarcity. This has been an issue for over the last few decades, and I think we don't talk about it enough. And what really interested me and sparked my interest in mountain cities in general and water scarcity, and also integrating gender into this aspect, because in India, water and gender goes hand in hand. It doesn't go separately. So this is why, like, I wanted to share a little bit about this topic, and just to give a brief overview of the Himalayas. They are actually known as the Asia Water Towers, which means we don't lack water. There is abundant. But why is there the scarcity? And that was my biggest question of, like, why are we struggling with this? I grew up with water scarcity all my life, over 30 years of my life, and I wanted to understand deeper and to see, like, what are these contradicting factors that lead to these issues. Can I have the next slide, please? These are a few, just for information. All these images and content are protected under FPIC, which is protects under the Indigenous rights under the UN. So that's why the images are actually not printed in the text that you see, that you have in the books. Those are 4 interesting images that you will see, which actually depicts the entire presentation that I'm going to speak today. Very simple pictures, if I can see, with like all of you can see. The first picture is actually, if you see those wires, what do you think those are? No, those are, yes, that's actually what everyone thinks, but these are actually water pipes that moves around the cities. And this is a very common picture, or like, if you go to the mountains, mountain cities and towns, this is a very common sight that you will see across the country, not just India, but I think across the world, that because there is high height and above the sea level, so a lot of these pipelines actually flow above the ground and not below the ground that you're used to. The second picture that you see are actually people waiting in line for water. This happens in most of the mountain cities and towns. This is actually from my field work in Netherlands. And so people start as early as 4 a.m. in the morning. They will line up, they will stand here, they will wait for hours till their turn comes. And the buckets are lined up. You won't see people sometimes, but they will just put the buckets and the whatever the water storage facility that they have, and they'll just put there, go back to sleep, or like they'll do their chores, household chores, and then they come back, and then it just goes according to the line. I'm just going to share one part of the field work, but there is also other part of the Himalayan town where it's more bordered towards the Nepal. And there you have token system. It's like movie tickets. Every morning the community center gives you a number from 1 to X number, whatever is there, and you need to have the token numbers in order to be able to take water from the community well. The third one that you see is what actually depicts a lot of like Indian water issues that you see. Water is actually not just a resource. Water is everything for a lot of people in India, especially if they come from Hindu communities. They worship water. They also survive because of water, because it is agriculture-based country. A lot of these rituals that they have in the Hindu practices, Hindu religion practices, they actually revolve around water. And therefore, all this, if you see those colorful pictures just above the pipe, those are actually Hindu gods. And then the one above that you see, the scarf kind of thing that's hanging, those are actually, they call it khada. Those are like sort of a religious there are like Buddhist practice. They put it over someone that you respect, someone older than you, someone in religious position or political position, anyone that you respect in general, you put it over that. And the pipeline that you see is actually a community water tap. So it's sort of depicting, showing that this is a form of respect and a form of this water source as actually something important to us. What you see on the fourth picture is actually two kids. This is something that if you ever have a chance to go to the Himalayas or the mountain cities and towns, if you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and just take a stroll around the towns or the community in itself that you are in, you will see this in every single morning. They're either washing clothes, fetching water, and these kids don't go to school. They spend half of their day doing these chores and activities throughout the household. Yes. So I wanted to show this contradictory paradox, water paradox of what the concept is from water scarcity. When we hear about scarcity, when we say water scarcity, we actually mean, okay, there is no physical water, there is no availability of water, right? But like I shared, scarcity, actually, we want to move away from, in the water sector, we're actually moving away from the concept of what we mean by physical scarcity, and we're moving on to the reality of what the scarcity means in the context of global water discussions. And we say that water scarcity is now multidimensional, which means that yes, the real scarcity exists, but most of it is actually constructed. And is manufactured through various political and policy processes, socio-political issues, institutional factors, etc. And this was actually now a theoretical concept by one of the very renowned scholars in our field called Laila Mehta, and this was studied in 2003. Now, if you look at the concept at the very core of what India and water and how does it connect is why this is important and why it is important for us to study. Yes, at the Sustainable Development Goals, at the larger global discussion, it is important, but why water in India is such an important subject, and why people like us or a lot of other researchers are actually talking a lot about it, and there's a lot of noise around it, is because it is actually a state subject in India as per the Constitution of India, which means that water is considered as a basic human right, yes, under the UN Convention rights, but two, this is actually falls under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, which means that we have a minimum standard that every human being or every citizen of India is has the right to actually get that amount of water for daily survival, which means drinking, cooking, cleaning, and shower. So there is a minimum standard that we need to actually, the state or the local government is actually supposed to provide to the citizens of that state or that place. So that's why it's a very important discussion that we have been having over the last decade. If you look at the numbers, Niti Aayog is actually a think tank under the government of India, and it was through their report, they estimated that over 600 million people live in extreme water stress condition. And these are just estimated number, and this is like 2019. So COVID has happened, COVID has gone. Now we're in a transition phase, and I'm sure this number has increased, if not decreased, for sure. Like I shared, with the mountains, especially in the mountain communities, Himalayas specifically, they are known as the Asia water towers, which means that there is abundance of water resources. But there is always a but, and ICMOD, which is actually the Integrated Mountain Development Mountain Research Institute, and this is actually one of the top research institutes in the mountain area. They actually recently put out a report where they estimated that in the mountain communities, especially in the Himalayas, there is a threat of water security to nearly 2 billion people living in the Himalayas, which includes India, Pakistan, some parts of Bhutan, Nepal. So this is what the contrast is about. And therefore, I argue in all of my research as well as what I have seen in the field, and I'm sure a lot of you have experienced and seen if you work in the sector, that availability is not really equivalent to accessibility. Next, please. So, what are the water realities in the field? I wanted to share a little bit about one of the field areas that I'm actually currently working on. This is Kohima. If you see the map, I purposely did not zoom out the area that I'm working because I wanted you to understand the geopolitical, strategically placed geopolitical position of the state. Because if you see that Nagaland, that's where I come from actually, is at the bottleneck of the northeast part of India, which actually 80% of the state is actually surrounded by international borders and not India. So only if you see there is a small like thin line there, so that's only 20% that connects with the rest part of India. So you'll see Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Tibet, and on the other side there is actually you see Bangladesh as well. So just to explain that how fragile positions, geopolitical positions actually impact natural resources, access to natural resources, I wanted to show that picture. That's why I just purposely put that separately. So Kohima, just to give a gist of what Kohima is actually part of the northeast part of India, and this comes under the Eastern Himalayan region, and it receives approximately 2,000 to 2,500 millimeter of rainfall annually, which is actually almost double some regions actually receive over double of the average rainfall in India. I was supposed to come back. I was sharing this with Dr. Park as well, that I was actually stuck in flash floods before I flew back to Korea. I was in the field, and just to give an example that there is a lot of floods that happen, there is a lot of rainfall that happen, there are lots of natural resources. These are untouched parts of India, which means that we are not just rich in natural resources, but also rich in raw materials. Also, one of the reasons, if you Google places like Northeast India, you'll see a lot of JICA projects happening across this region because they're very good at taking infrastructure projects that provides direct raw materials to their work. But yeah, moving that aside, yes, like I shared in the beginning, this all throughout the year, there are dry periods, which ranges from April to July. But even then, the rest part of the year, all throughout the year, there's water scarcity. There's never a time, even for me, as someone who grew up in that region, there was never a time where we were like, oh, we have enough water, because there was never enough water. There was always shortage. But because you live in that reality, you don't really see that because you're so used to it. You don't get it, so you just find means and ways to adapt and find alternative coping mechanisms to be able to come out of the situation. But as I grew older and I did my master's, I worked in the sector, I worked in the development sector and then I've been in the water and the gender field for almost like 9 years now. And now I see what it means to actually live so complacent to the situation that you become so oblivious to it. And that's what I saw in my fieldwork as well, that a lot of people are like, yeah, there is a problem, so what can we do about it? But during my fieldwork, I conducted over 200 household interviews and also did a lot of like FGDs and this is just one part of the field that I went to, and 80% of the urban households that live, and I'm not talking about the urban part. This is like urban household. Kohima is also known actually as a smart city in the country. So you can see the contradictory of it, that 80% of the urban household actually spend up to 50% of the monthly income from water vendors, which means that they purchase water from different private sector, like private businesses. And interestingly, if you see, if I may say that women orchestrate most of it, like as we know, you're all from the field, so I'm sure like you're aware, like including house of water management, who cooking, cleaning, gardening, washing clothes, everything is negotiated by women, right? And we have one man in the room, so I don't want to say that this is a competition between male and female, but this is just to show that there is a gap, and the understanding is not to compete, but the understanding is that women are already behind. So the idea of studying and understanding the gender gaps and the realities of it is to at least come in par. It's not about going above each other. It's about meeting at the ground, right? And so even then, even when they are part of this negotiation and part of this whole collective, they still do not have a position in decision making. And this is the reality everywhere. This is the reality everywhere, and it's not a new case in Nagaland as well. May I have the next slide, please? And so this is just an invisible, I talk about here, like I'm just trying to show a reality of, like I shared in the first photo that I shared. This is like an everyday thing that you will see. This is like two little girls, they're age 6 and 8, they're cousins, meaning that their mothers are like siblings. And every morning at like 6:30, I actually leave like 5 minutes. My field house, guest house was actually 5 minutes away from it. And I could see, because it's a hillock, and I can see from up like in my balcony, I could see them every morning at 6:30. They both, what you see, I don't know if the picture is clear enough, but we carry something I've seen actually similar in Korea traditional. You also have that similar. It's made of like bamboos, and so you carry it on your back, and then you carry the water on your back. So both of them, they're like 6 and 8 years old, and you'll see them carrying water every single day from 6 o'clock. They're out of their houses, and they travel like almost 40 minutes downhill. And mind you, this is also not a plain area, which means that there is more physical labor that's required. They go all the way down, come all the way up, like at least 6 times, starting from 6 a.m. So these are the reality of what it looks like. And oftentimes these are girl children that are helping their mother or the family. And so like this invisible labor is often excluded very much from technical solutions and policy making spaces. You will often see that even then, even with all this negotiation, even with all this existing, I would say, roles that they play within the society, and also especially specifically in the water area, you will see that all of this financial transaction with water purchase even is actually controlled by their husbands or their male counterparts in the family. Interestingly though, in Nagaland or the community that I'm working in, there is something that I found very, very interesting, that social capital played a huge role in how they negotiate these spaces, meaning that it was not just about money. Having money does not equate for them to have water in their buckets. Interestingly, a lot of them really care about how much network they've made over the years. For example, they have friends who wait for them in line. So they will, instead of, for example, someone goes to work, the other person will wait for them in the line to carry water. Sometimes it's also about, I have more water, so I will share that with you in good faith, and you can share that with me some other time. It's very moral economy based. Also, just to note that this is also very related with Christian, this place is also, Nagaland is actually 98% Christian state. So a lot of this like moral obligations also come from religious beliefs and ethnic identities that each of these communities uphold. So this is something very interesting that's sparked in my work, that women's social networks are actually the key role of how the buckets filled, and not money, or not actually how rich they are or how poor they are. Yes, it does impact, but a lot of it is women and their interaction within their kinship, their neighbors, the people that they have contacts with. So it was very interesting to see these social networks form within the society. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah. So a lot of my work is actually involved around informal water markets, which means that how this, if you see the picture, actually this is how the water sellers sell water from one house to another. They just go around with these trucks, and each of these tankers have like about 1,000, depending on the tanker size, this is like 2,000 liter tanker. So it depends on the tanker size, but usually it's between 2,000 liters to 6,000 liters. And they go house to house selling this water. And this cost depend. There is no formal institutionalized system where like, oh, this water costs, let's say, for example, $10. It's not a fixed rate. It's very dependent on who you know. It's all about context. So I could sell you $10, but I could sell to Dr. Park for like $20 because I don't know her well. So it's very negotiation based. So it was very interesting to see this informal water sharing networks on how, when I mean by block rotations, it's basically, for example, there in this localities, there are like block system. There's like block 1, 2, 3, similar to like goose here, like districts, but like smaller units specifically. So they go on rotation. For example, this week, this district will get 50 trucks of water, or like next week, it's going to be their turn. So it's very organized systematically, but this is not, there is no formal structure. So it's informally formal, but everyone follows the social order, but actually there is no formal governance system that actually exists, because the local government actually knows that there is an issue, knows that there is water scarcity because they themselves live with it. They themselves follow the structure, but there is no, the government has not approved it, but they live with it and they know that this exists, right? And so this is a very interesting system that exists within the society. And like I said, these are this flourish very independently, but also dependently, meaning that they form their, and this water is actually, interestingly, in India, because of the colonization, anything that flows, since the British colonization, there is something called the Easement Act, which means that anything that flows in my land, for example, I own this hotel. Under this hotel, like there's a waterfall that's going through my hotel. That's my water. So actually, as per the Easement Act and that law, thanks to the colonizers, that law still exists in India. So, which means that, for example, the spring water is coming from the mountain, and obviously it follows a stream path. So if it crosses my land, I have the right to actually block that water. So rightfully, that's wrong, but technically, as per the law, that becomes a part of the system. And so a lot of these water vendors are actually taking water from the springs that are actually not like, if you technically look at it, it's actually not owned by anyone, right? It's a government, or like it's a public property. But because it flows in my land, it becomes mine. So I use that water to resell it to the people. So this is a system that exists within like the structure. So yeah, that's one thing. And so like I just talk about how this kind of all this existing things that often we don't see in the development sector, and when we do projects and just programs, all of us are from the sector, and we just focus so much on infrastructure. Add more infrastructure. Let's build like 20 tanks. Let's build 20 schools, right? Let's build 20. There is a problem with, let's say, there's a wash project, and we just end up building like 50 toilets, but nobody uses the toilets, right? There are so many stories like that from the field that I can share, but just I think to focus on, like, I just wanted to like add this, that like a lot of our projects actually focuses on the infrastructure, and we don't really see this inside household level negotiation or informal practices, which actually, it's not a bad thing, right? To have all of this, people are now building resilience and finding ways to actually different kind of mechanisms to actually be able to sustain themselves. but there can be a mechanized way if the government or the policies or the projects that we build are actually taking in consideration of all of these issues. But we're so focused on adding more. We have so many augmentation projects in India. No shade to any of the development aid projects, because I work in development aid as well. But a lot of like JICA projects in my region, I'm saying JICA because they work in this region a lot. So JICA and USAID projects, actually they do a lot of this like big infrastructure projects. But a lot of these projects actually, there is a $3 billion project that was done like 10 years ago by USAID and World Bank, and that actually failed because now the pipelines have been lying there for the last 9 years. And interestingly, when I dig more, I found out that none of them had actually done like the social aspect of what they should have done. They didn't speak to the communities. They didn't speak to the local leaders. They didn't take into consideration of what this socio-economic factors exist within the society. This is also an indigenous community. There is also ethnic minorities. So a lot of this consideration usually like are not taken into account, and a lot of this absence of these things actually, in fact, not help the people, but it actually widens the gap. And I realized that this is not to shade any of the projects that exist. Like, of course, it's important. Projects are important. I am part of it. But a lot of these issues exist because we don't consider this gender disaggregated data. We don't see these indicators in the policies. We don't look at what the ground realities are. And even like, for example, like in my region, there are like actually quotas for women representation. But interestingly, representation does not mean you have a voice. So you could be in the table, but your voice does not take into account, right? A lot of the times. And so this never translated to like substantive participation or leadership. So there has been that huge gap. I'll move to the next slide, please. I'm going to be quicker. And so like these are some of the inclusive approaches in collective action that I learned from the field, and just wanted to share that like I shared previously, there are a lot of this like neighborhood water sharing pacts where women organize within their communities. There's like collective bargaining, which means they come together and then they bargain the price. Okay, I'll pay you $100, I'll pay you $50, I'll pay you like $20, and then there is this like bargaining system where like women collectively they form this small informal groups, but actually it works because women are really good at negotiation, right? So they end up getting like fairer prices. Also like indigenous knowledge. A lot of this, if you see a lot of this Himalayan water spring projects, we actually have a lot of these springs that are actually getting revival, meaning that the dry water resources are now getting revival through like technology as well as this indigenous knowledge systems. And these women are actually playing a huge role in protecting these springs. There is also something called the water communities or Samaj. Samaj is basically sort of a self-help group, women collective self-help group in India that they are actually part of the formal governance system actually. So yeah, so these cases actually demonstrate how like when communities take leadership and is recognized, solutions actually become more equitable and resilient. This is another example that I really love to talk about whenever I share about water stories. Is there's something called the Female Friends of the Water, and this is actually a very interesting grassroots movement that happened in a region in the northern part of India. Where there was drought for years, and this grassroots movement, these women communities, they formed these small units across the region. So there are about like 100 now, but it's all started with, and these are all like illiterate women, meaning that they have never been to schools, they have never studied, no education at all, and they come together to actually take charge and ownership of their resources and say that, okay, we're gonna start a revolution, we're gonna make changes, we're gonna make a movement, and we're gonna conserve what we have, and there needs to be a system. So they started very quickly. This also started because in India there is a area where like women are considered as water brides. So if you Google, you'll be able to find that. So water brides, basically means that men marry multiple women to be able to accumulate more water in the household.
No.
So this movement actually started because of all of these issues as well. So just to share that this like kind of participation, when it shifts from tokenism, which basically means that, you know, using women or gender as the tick list in like projects, have now moved to like ownership. And when that happens, you actually see how especially in the water field, like this addresses not just scarcity, but actually redefines the way we see governance and policies, right? So this was an interesting example that I wanted to share. Yeah, these are like few of the strategies and tools to empower equitable water. Just looking at the very grassroots and looking at like community level leadership and allowing women to take not just sit on the table, but actually be able to speak and take ownership and leadership. And also to have continuous participation across the project cycle. And usually they're always used as the final beneficiary, right? But I think now we need to transition and move into not just looking at them as beneficiaries, but actually partners, and move alongside them and be able to use them in the decision-making spaces, and not just use them as a validation afterwards to, you know, tick off the things in your project. That's why gender mainstreaming is so important, and I think that's why all of us are here, to be able to ensure that these marginalized communities, vulnerable communities, are throughout the design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation processes. And that also leads to the next point, where I do think that incorporating all of these local narratives, indigenous practices and expertise in all these water issues really help in integrating better and equitable projects and programs. Next, please. And of course, we cannot leave like two of the main things where we all love talking about in the sector is like capacity building. But I think I want to like really move away and say that yes, training is important, but it's important to build the leadership pathways, which means that not just training and leaving them, but training them to become leaders and take ownership of that is really, really important, I think, at this stage of our work, to be able to advance to sustainable development goals. And even like policy advocacy, like to be more like have more gender responsive budgeting, and have mandatory gender disaggregated data collection, in especially water governance, because especially in the sector, the global south or like developing countries, this is really, really important. And also to be able to take good lessons, like I shared, to be able to inform not just within the local communities, but also to be able in the larger global water spaces. Next, please. Yeah, and so this is what I think that I wanted to share, was to reframe the normal narrative of what it means to look at the larger picture, but also to actually dig into the insights of what it means to actually work and to be able to make a difference, is to work with the communities, to not just be the outside expertise, but also acknowledge and accept, and also involve people who are actually living those issues in their everyday life, and shift from seeing women just as mere beneficiaries, and actually look at them as agents of change, and to be able to like foster Indigenous leadership, to be able to embed gender mainstreaming as the foundation. And yes, so that's the end of my presentation. I think next slide is just, yeah, thank you. And this is my QR code to connect. If you're, I'm happy to connect with you, and I'll take questions later. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Minha, about really comprehensive showcases and also insight and interesting story. So now we can go for a panel discussion, and I would like to, there it is, okay, here. Yes, now I would like to invite panelists. So actually we are quite small circle. So it's possible, of course, you can stay your seat and then you can speak. But this is YouTube streaming, so I recommend you panelists are at front and have your seat. So Yuli, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So actually, if other panelists are don't mind, actually Yuli is coming from the Philippines, and Philippines is now the series of typhoons are coming, so she's quite in a condition of bad connection. So if you're okay, maybe Yuli can be first discussant. So you can speak,
Okay.
Yuli.
Okay, so good afternoon. Good afternoon from a rainy Philippines. We are expecting another typhoon, another strong one. Anyway, so thank you for inviting me to sit as panelist in this session, which I understand aims to discuss methods of gender equality and social inclusion within the perspective of water management based on the 3 studies presented. I want to thank the speakers on a very well thought presentation, and I hope that I'm able to manage to give my perspective as a panelist on this. But on the onset, let me tell you that I'm not an educator, so I'm not so familiar with the academic landscape. I'm more than familiar with the water management sector because this is the sector where I work in the Philippines. So the papers and the presentations, as I have said, were all good, and they clearly showed at current times the situation of gender mainstreaming in policies and in projects, and in effect, it paints a very clear picture of how women, in general, who is considered a key player in the water sector landscape, are still feeling the impacts of a society, I would say like a male-dominated society. Clearly, women bear the burden of water shortages and water insecurity. The same can also be said on sanitation. There are numbers of studies that show that disparity and how women are negatively impacted when it comes to access to water, be it at their personal level, or at the level of the household, or at the community. Research results pointed out to these glaring inequalities. More recently, as I have heard the presentation from the Korean lady, it seems that even in the sphere of education, in particular on STEM, there are still fewer women, and this is one of the many challenges in the academic sector. And I recall that about maybe 4 years ago, I spoke to one of the lady professor in Malaysia, and she said that they are really experiencing this kind of challenge, wherein very, very few women are enrolling in engineering courses. Most of the women, you find them in the social sciences courses. Maybe because it's not so sexy to go to the engineering course. Right? Yeah. And same presentation also highlighted about the other presentation I made from Lao clearly highlighted the role of women in water development projects, that it provided an insight as to how women can enrich policy and decision making, water planning and management, their active role and involvement in local community management, and their role as important stakeholder in the water resources management area. Let me just, I'm really thrilled hearing the presentation about the enrollment, about the academe, and how these problems are becoming more pronounced these days. And reading between the lines, they showed that despite modern times and with all the development changes, the role of women as an active player in the water management landscape is still not really optimized. Yes, changes in gender mainstreaming have now become a reality, but there is still a lot that needs to be done. And I can say that while women are now given the voice, The question is that voice really heard and listened to? We might have the voice, but is there somebody listening to us? I think that should be the question that we should be asking. While water management policies and programs are now engendered, the fact remains that efforts are still required to ensure that women are seen, their participation acknowledged, not as token, and their opinions are heard and, more importantly, listened to. Simply put, the important role of women should be made center stage in all water development policies and programs. And I think, as a woman myself, I think women are really game changers. In 2023, the United Nations reported that despite significant progress in expanding access to water and sanitation services globally, disparities persist, disproportionately affecting women, girls, and marginalized gender groups. So I think when they said marginalized gender groups, maybe they're referring to transgenders. The studies clearly demonstrated that women and girls are greatly affected by a lack of access to safe drinking water, sanitation, and hygiene services, and to a large extent, the possibility to decide over water development and management related services. This is further proven by the fact that the crucial role of women play in water resources management has only been partially addressed in institutional arrangements linked to the development and management of water resources in general. Additionally, there is a lack of women involvement in planning and placement of sanitation facilities. It may come as a surprise to us, but this is the reality. Furthermore, gender equality may have a significant impact on WASH behaviors, conditions, and outcomes. Understanding this reciprocal relationship requires gender-specific data that addresses these issues. In a study by Gertz and Ayer in 2018, gender dynamics and disparities were found to have an impact on people's access to sanitation, as well as on their development, health, and empowerment. Due to the biological differences between men and women, they have varying needs in terms of sanitation facilities. These are most notable during menstruation period, pregnancy, and post-childbirth period. So this must be recognized. Which brings me to two important SDGs that are closely related. That of number 5, which is to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls for sustainable development. And of course, SDG 6, to provide access for all to clean, affordable, and potable water supply and sanitation by 2030. And ladies and gentlemen, if ever there's a gentleman present there, we are very far from this. We will not be able to comply or to make our commitment to the SDG 6 a realistic by 2030. Not only developing countries, I think most of the developing countries are in this stage now. These two SDGs are interconnected, interlinked, and integrated. Why? Let me cite like 3 reasons. One is about disproportionate burden. Women and girls often bear the heavy workload of looking for water. They are always responsible for fetching water, which is time-consuming and physically demanding task that can hinder girls' education and women's income-generating opportunities. There is that aspect of safety and dignity. The lack of safe private sanitation facilities poses risk of abuse for women and girls, while their specific needs such as menstrual hygiene management are often not met. In my country, we have very, very few data about menstrual hygiene management actually. And the other one is, of course, an equal participation. Despite the women's vital role and their voices and needs, these are frequently excluded from the design and implementation of water and sanitation services, including that of leading more to inequalities. So clearly, water and gender are connected. Now, let me just speak very briefly on the integrated water resources management, which is a process which promotes the coordinated development and management of water, land, and related resources in order to maximize resultant economics and social welfare in an equitable manner without compromising the sustainability of vital ecosystems. So if you are familiar with IWRM, there are two important principles which focused on women. One, water development and management should be based on a participatory approach. So it means it should be broad-based, multi-stakeholder, meaning women should be actively participating in that. And the other one is that women play a central part in the provision, management, and safeguarding of water. Again, very clear, it recognizes the role of women, and by that we can conclude that through the adoption of IWRM principles, we can do a lot. We can pursue to achieve greater gender equality and equity, and recognizing that women are integral and critical to the management of water resources. While not everything can be resolved via IWRM, it offers us an opportunity to further gender mainstreaming efforts in our water development policies and programs, and we can continue empowering women and girl children so that we in the end is able to achieve sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Yoli. Actually, Yoli Gomez, she's engaging in this water and environment work and project. I think already around the 40 years, something like that. So those kinds of history, she's in the midst of the gender, how I can say, gender meaning in the this kind of practical work and in water sector. So now I would like to invite second discussant, Dr. Choi Jungeum. She's Secretary General of Human Asia.
Okay, hello, nice to meet you. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for your fascinating presentation, and thank you for inviting me second time this year to this forum, this meaningful venue and place. Actually, last year after I went back home, after we had discussion and everything after the forum, I talked to all of my friends and families about the things that we discussed that day. It was that interesting for me, and I learned a lot on that day. And today, the same. I think I will do the same to my friends, my colleagues, and my family members. Yeah. I work for a human rights NGO called Human Asia, based in Seoul. We do some research advocacy work and education, but also we do some development project in different countries such as Uzbekistan, Jordan, the Philippines, etc. And actually, today's presentations gave me a chance to compare and contrast what I have observed in the field, working as a practitioner, implementing the project. And I wanted to raise some questions, maybe raise some provocative ideas as a feedback. The title of this session is Empowering Equitable Waters, Advancing Gender Mainstreaming in Water Management. Therefore, it's obvious that the end goal of this session and the end goal of everything is gender mainstreaming and achieving gender equality, right, in development. But my question is, is gender equality and the discourse of gender equality, does it help to achieve gender equality, especially in the context of developing countries? That's my question. Because gender equality, for me, it's a right thing and it's also a good thing. But I'm not sure whether it is also a good and also a right thing in the developing countries context or not, because sometimes and still now, for us this is a right thing, but in some context, this is seen not as a right thing. Okay, maybe a right thing, but not a good thing, or maybe not neither good nor a right thing. Especially when there is a strong local cultural background, context, and also tradition. And when there is a strong, maybe negative belief about human rights, especially regarding the gender equality. In many places of this world, gender equality is still seen. There are places where perceive it as a Western's agenda, right? For example, in case of Jordan, there was a heavy influx of Syrian refugees in Jordan, especially after 2010. And what I observed over there was that there was a lot of fund influx also in the local community. However, there was always an agenda that was prioritized, including gender equality. Therefore, most of the funds were prioritized to be spent on the gender equality. But however, the local agents, I could hear the complaint from them that, gender equality is not the most important issue. The most urgent thing for us for this context is, to protect the basic rights, like a right to food, right to shelter, right to protection, rather than gender equality. And we have our own, set of rules, principles, and our own standard, right? And when we do the project, development project, and when we really meet the participants from the local community, what we usually hear is not something like, our rights are, we are discriminated. We do not have gender equality, etc. But they talk more about the gender role, different roles, via context, and they request more understanding from the donor agency about the context. Then, so my question was, does it help to talk about gender equality during development projects to achieve gender equality or not? So actually, I really appreciated when Yolanda raised an issue of local participation in the local context, in the India context, and also Dr. Lee, when she mentioned that when Korean government tried to introduce those award program to boost the participation of the female students in the science STEM sector, but there was actually backlash from the male students. And actually, that's what we often can witness in the field, for example. And I think that's because, it's about the morality, moral standard, but there is also international norm, international standard, but there is a clash. But often clash is not addressed until it becomes very, very big, very, very visible. I wanted to discuss with the participants and panelists more about how we can assess this issue in more, to make it more realizable, achievable in practice. Thank you.
Thank you. And okay, so next to discussions, she's Kyungjin Oh, Vice Chair of International Solidarity Center, Korea Women's Associations United.
How many minutes do I have?
Well, actually, the time already, almost already approached. So maybe 5 minutes or something.
Thank you so much for inviting for this session. Hello, my name is Kyungjin. I work for the Korea Women's Associations United, KWAU. So KWAU was founded in 1987, and it is an umbrella organization. We have 36 women's rights organizations working on diverse issues across the country. And our mission is to advance gender equality at the substantial level through the collective action and solidarity at the local, national, and the international levels. Actually, I prepared for my discussion to emphasize that how important it is to integrate gender equality perspective in the national and international policy project, especially the national natural resource management sector. But as we are very much aware that it is very important, so I'd like to set a few of the questions for three presenters who gave very insightful presentation in this session. So my first question is going to the Professor Minha Lee. Your presentation was very insightful in showing how the severe gender gap in the STEM field and throughout the interlinks between the education and the labor market in practice, especially sharing the Korean experience. We believe that to close this gender gap in the STEM field, we need a very systemic, comprehensive, and long-term action of all stakeholders. But I believe that we can also see some positive changes from young women students who are already studying in the STEM field. Because in Korea, as you may know, that we saw in recent years there have been rising the feminist women's rights movement among the young women. And now the young women in not only in Korea but also at so many countries, they are very bravely coming forward to share their experiences and to connect their own personal experiences to with the social context. And then also they were very good, very creative agents of democracy, defending democracy in this multiple crises of the world. So I just want to know that if there is some positive dynamics in the research field or in the university amongst the young female and also the male students nowadays, can you see this kind of changes at the positive level? If you can see or you cannot see, what do you think the main reasons for this are? Because your presentations are very depressing. So I just want to hear some of if there is some positive changes from the STEM field in relation to the young women's movement in recent years we could see in South Korea. And my second question is to Nampong. In Nampong's presentation, I noticed that she mentioned that projects focus on gender integration in the water management sector still remain fewer than in any other development areas. So what do you see as the main reason for this gap? And what priorities should be set to tackle this issue? And my final question is going to Vilina. And it was really interesting to get to know the very creative informal dynamics and systems among women about the getting water and then have a sustainable household in terms of water management. So my question is about the interrelations between the multiple crises at the international level and its effect, the substantial effects on the communities in terms of water management. Meaning that we are now living in the middle of the multiple crises. We see at the global level, we see the rising neoliberalism and anti-rights and anti-gender movements. And also there have been so many wars like supported by global conglomerates. And also we see the rising authoritarianism and also declining democracy. So I want to know if there is, in this context, what do you see as the greatest challenges in ensuring indigenous voices and feminist perspective in building resilient and very creative, as you mentioned, the informal water management systems in the local area, as you mentioned in the informal innovation and community resilience system. So if there is some impacts and challenges you see in the local areas, what are they? So these are my 3 questions. Thank you. Thank you very much for the panel discussion. Yes, it was very interesting to listen to the panels, how they took my presentation. And to go through, I totally agree with your point that there is such a thing as a stages of development. And that's applicable to the individual as well. Like when the baby is born, we say she or he has to learn about himself first, and then they go through the family, and then they go through the community, and then at the end, they do self-esteem. So that's the development of like the mental development. In that sense, yes, society has to develop to incorporate or to adopt gender equality as well. But at the same time, gender equality is a philosophical thing. It's more of a paradigm that sometimes it's easier for people to accept the changes in paradigm in total transition time, rather than trying to change their thoughts, or their belief when the society is all settled down. In that sense, I personally think the easiest time to incorporate and introduce gender equality maybe is the transition period, when the society is undergoing dramatic changes in terms of both society and economically and politically as well. So paradigm shift, it doesn't really happen in one direction anyway, it's a multi-direction thing. So so I agree that it's difficult and there are gonna be a backlash, but at the same time, that could be the minimal backlash, rather than you may expect harder and stronger backlash when the society is settled, like Korea. In Korea at the moment, we're going through the gender conflicts and generational conflicts as well. That actually leads to your question, saying, yes, the feminist movement is happening and it's dramatic, and I support most of them, but at the same time, it's actually creating another source of discrimination as well. One is the gender equality, which means if it goes on to the thing, okay, a particular gender is being discriminated, so we're going to raise this up so that it's equal. But sometimes, if it goes on for too long, it actually goes beyond the equal level, and then it creates another kind of discrimination. That is actually happening in Korea in some sense. For instance, there are very strong demand coming from mothers saying that they want maternity leave and parental leave to be counted for their promotion period. And when you go through the companies, you need to work for at least, like, for instance, 15 years of working years to be dedicated or to be approved for the next level promotion. But mothers are saying, oh, it is unfair for mothers if the parental leave and maternity leaves are not counted as working years. But that actually discriminates non-mother females. What happens to them? They may not have chosen not to give birth. And they basically are not mothers. Just because they're not mothers, they are not entitled to maternity leave or parental leave. They have to work full 15 years. So they are working for full 15 years, and this lady who became mother worked only for 10 years and took 5 years of parental leave. Is it fair for them to be on the same, counted for same 15 years to be promoted at the same time? That sort of thing is actually creating gender conflict, generational conflict, and that complicates pretty much everything. So when I think about the movements and all this like gender equality policies, it has to be considered in a very multifaceted way. We have to be very careful if we are not creating another kind of discrimination or another kind of conflict. So in academic, it's a lot easier because they're all students. They're only male and female. There's no mother and father. That is why gender equality in education is so much easier to achieve than the gender equality in professions, because the gender is divided into more specific ways. Lady, gentleman, mother, and father. There are 4 genders. Just to simply say. Thank you very much for your ideas. I will continue with my research.
Then maybe second question can go Nampoong. Nampoong, can you follow this?
Yes. Yeah. So the questions from Miss, sorry, the name.
Oh, yeah.
Is that, oh, yeah, about why there's not many like gender mainstreaming in water management project in Laos. So basically, when we're talking about water resource management, it's more like a technical stuff that people are focusing on. It's like they pay attention to those area more than about gender itself. So like I mentioned, it's about like integration more to increase the inclusivity of the project itself with the community who are benefit from the project. So sometimes when we talk about those kind of project, people will have the first thing that come to their mind will be like, oh, so we're talking about water resource management. So it will be technical about dam operation, water quality control, inspection, blah, 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 natural resources, environment impact. But then we're not actually focused on how those impact can be interfere or kind of like intervene into the livelihood of people, how does actually impact. So sometimes like they are more or less focused on that part and partially mention like, oh, so when we do this project, we should integrate gender equality as a concept to improve the inclusivity of the project itself. So that's why there's a gender mainstreaming in the project. More likely to let people understand that when you implemented some certain project, you have to understand that everybody is equally impact and benefit from the project, not just only the people who have the main control, like presentation from our previous speaker, that male are more dominant in terms of like knowledge, control, resource management within the household itself. So that's also the reason. And when we're talking about gender itself as a project, they're focused on something like community interaction, more like behavior itself or mindsets of the people. So when we talk about gender, we're talking about gender-based violence, how to prevent that, how women can raise their voice, or sometimes like how they can be a leader or improve woman leadership in that area. So it's totally that how in Laos people focus on gender itself as another point of project, not just about water resource management with the gender equality as the coordinate project itself. And I think how we can tackle this issue, how we improve that. I think maybe we can start, like Ms. Yoli mentioned, like when we're talking about stakeholder engagement, we should mention that women is also part of direct person integrate with the water resource management. How can they access and control the water? Not just only talking about the male counterpart in the household, but then we should talking about how we can engage them as a person who are actually involved in these cycles of using the water, manage the water in the household, and etc. That's how the project should be focused on the approach and methodology, how we can engage those people to share the experience itself, how they basically and physically attach to that part of the work, especially the water management section. So I think we're not just talking about technical anymore. We just try to put the technical into practice. That's why gender should be included in some certain part of the project or even in the whole process of implementation itself. Yes, that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lena?
Yeah, I'll start with like answering quickly what Dr. Choi had asked. And I think it's very interesting because this is the ongoing debate actually in the gender space. And I think that debate actually transitioned from the fact that now when we talk about gender, we often talk about women at the forefront. And I think that's where the equity versus equality debate comes, right? And when we talk about like equity, we always, when we talk about equality, it's about treat everyone equally. Versus when we talk about equity, it's more transition towards making it more tailored towards needs and what that situation or that person requires. And I think this is like a very interesting ongoing debate that has been happening for quite some time now, because a lot of these projects, like you rightly mentioned, there's a very famous project actually in India where they created like X amount of toilets because the women were not allowed to use toilets in the household because there are these socio-cultural practices that they need to do open defecation. But the government of India actually wanted to eradicate that, and so now they wanted to build like X number of toilets. I think it was like 50 or 100. It was a big number. But after a month or two, when there was a monitoring and evaluation, they saw that 80% of the people, or actually more than that, women don't use it. And when they investigated, they found out that actually the only way they could come out of the house and talk with their friends and the community is actually going to the community toilets and the community wells, where they sit and discuss, chatter, gossip, and enjoy their social interaction, which now they can't do it if they use the toilet at home. So a lot of this gaps and understanding of how the social cultural contexts play a role, it's not right, but it's also important that this needs to be addressed at the core. And the reason why this equity and equality exists is because women, there's no argument, there is no competition of men versus women, like I previously shared as well. I think we are already too far behind to have that argument. The idea is to be able to cater to our to what we are falling behind, to be able to at least come at par. We can't talk about equality when we are not equal, right? We're not even there. So why do we talk about equality when we are not there yet? We're still behind. That's why equity is important, to be able to cater and to be able to position ourselves in a place where we say, we need equality because we are there. When we are not there, why do we even talk about equality, right? So I think that's really important to also like talk in this like spaces of like gender. I think to answer your question, I think it's very complex to explain how this indigenous or actually marginalized communities or disproportionate communities or even disadvantaged communities that there's no right word to define communities that are actually left behind within this global discussion spaces, but especially for indigenous communities and marginalized communities, these people actually live very close with nature. And I think that is the reason why now at the global discussion, indigenous people are at the forefront of like COP or like global discussions. Like they're now like, okay, we need indigenous voices, and now there's a separate chair for them. A lot of this discussions actually came because when you look at the climate change and its impact, these are the people at the forefront who are getting affected the most. Any sort of climate change impacts, like be it flood, drought, typhoons, any kind of like different aspects of whether it's like glacier melting, whether it's like any sort of natural calamities or man-made calamities. A lot of these people are actually living very close with nature. Nature is how they sustain their livelihood and their everyday lives, right? And they're so interconnected with nature, and that's why they have this indigenous knowledge, they have this ways of sustainable living, sustainable development or sustainable living that we now so much advertise. It's actually something that people have been doing for the longest time. Right now, it's a very elite word that we use in our sector, but it's something that they have been at the forefront, and that's why a lot of these impacts that we have now, they get impacted the most, and that's why the discussion is about these communities at the forefront who actually does not contribute much to these issues, but they are the ones getting impacted the most. And that's why I think that in terms of impact, that's a larger discussion, I guess, but I would say because they're very interconnected with the nature, with the way they live, and the everyday lives that they live within their just coexisting with nature. And I think that's the reason why the impact is even more larger when it comes to like these global issues. Yeah. I hope that answers.
Thank you so much, all the speakers and panelists. Well, actually, our discussion can stay all night. So anyhow, really, this fruitful session with your insights and comprehensive inputs, and I think we can have next opportunity to further much more elaboration and hopefully kind of some, even though a little, improvement. Thank you, everybody. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nampoon. Thank you, Yoli. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.